I'm gonna need is an agenda, however. Okay, let's call this meeting to order. If you could stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Chair Lewis, Vice Chair Campenny,
Here.
Board Member Dooley, Board Member Makeumson. Here. Board Member Schroeth,
Here.
Board Member Waka,
Here.
Board Member Walson.
Here. Can I get a approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
I have one addition that I'd like to add. I actually was at the last meeting.
What? Does
I ma-
anybody remember him there?
I made the first motion
Oh,
to
okay.
approve the minutes or seconded it. So I'd like that correction added because I
Okay.
was there.
So do we have an approval with that correction?
So moved.
Second?
I'll do it.
Nick, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can I get approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Katie, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let the record show that Ms. Dooley has arrived.
Hello.
Okay? This is on Sailfish, so we'll put that aside. Does anyone have any comments, public comments regarding anything that is not on the agenda?
I'd just like to make a quick comment.
I didn't
Don't
say- I
anybody?
didn't say board members yet.
Oh, you didn't?
No,
Sorry.
public,
Public.
okay? None. Now, board members. Would you like to say something, Mr.
I would.
Walker?
I'd like to say two things. The first one is that he's not Chris Lewis, and Chris Lewis looks a lot better. And the second thing that I'd like to say is that my daughter had a situation that occurred where she saved two ladies out here on the city dock on Saturday afternoon, or maybe Sunday afternoon, this weekend. And it was because they fell off their boat and they had no way, they were unable to get back up. And I believe she emailed Merritt, and Merritt told the staff about it, but I just wanted to bring it up at this meeting because I think it's a situation that we're going to have to, that needs to be addressed, because two ladies fell off a boat and she had to help get them on another boat that she has no idea whose boat it was, but they were out of breath. They were probably 70, 80 years old, and, it was just a bad situation. So there needs to be a ladder or something down there to look at that. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else have a comment?
I have one more thing. Are you sure you don't want an age limit on who can do it?
Do what?
Is it old people that's a problem?
No, but
No, okay.
that just was. who
I'm going
it
to
was.
stop this here before we
Okay,
have a problem.
please.
Any other comments? Okay. First up, Sportfish Marina UPUD. Kev, you're up.
Thank you. Let me just say slide selection again. So this, shall I read into record the title? It's quite
Yes,
a long thing.
please.
So this is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, amending the city's official zoning map, thereby applying a land development zoning designation of UPUD, Urban Planned Unit Development, to a parcel of land totaling 0.63 acres located at 304 Northeast Flagler Avenue, being more fully described in Exhibit A attached, establishing the Sportfish Marina Urban Planned Unit Development, UPUD, consisting of a 51-room hotel, 64-seat restaurant, and 49-slip marina, and allowing uses permitted in the urban district, providing for approval of a site plan, providing for development conditions, declaring the project to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, providing directions to the city clerk, providing for repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, providing for acceptance by the applicant, and for other purposes. I'll just take a break to get my breath back. So this is a resubmittal, and the board did hear this some time ago, passed it on to the City Commission with comments. The City Commission decided not to make a decision on that and directed the applicant to come back with an alternative proposal. This proposal includes a 51-room hotel. If you recall, the last proposal were more suite-like rooms with kitchens in there. This one is rooms without kitchens. A 64-seat restaurant. This is a new addition to the proposal. 49 marina slips, and that's consistent with what was previously proposed. The location is east of Flagler Avenue. The zoning is urban waterfront. It's located in the urban districts of the CRA. The zoning is a proposed UPUD, urban planned unit development. An urban planned unit development allows conditions to be attached to depart from city code, and also allows variances to various other zoning requirements. The future land use is marine industrial, and that remains as marine industrial. So the marine industrial district allows the uses that are being proposed here today: commercial, lodging, and marinas. The zoning, the UPUD, allows any use within the urban districts, which also includes hotels, restaurants, and marinas. The reason why this is within coming to the board is primarily because the city code requires the City Commission and CRB to look at parking within building envelope. So the UPUD request incorporates proposals that do depart from the city's land development code, and there are the two major ones are elevated buildings. So we need to look at any building which has parking beneath an elevated building envelope. And also, if the building is 100 feet more in width, which this is, then there needs to be a vista through, or a view corridor through the building from the public right-of-way to the river, which is not less than 12 feet in width. And I let the applicant demonstrate how that has been accommodated within their architecture. Any parking on this site needs to comply with land development regulations unless variances are granted as part of the urban planned unit development approval process. The hotel requires 51 spaces, the restaurant 16. We count the employees as provided, which are 7 spaces. The marina requires 13 spaces. That gives us a total of 87 required spaces. The proposal includes 2 levels of parking under the building envelope, which provide 50 parking stalls. So an additional plus or minus 40 spaces are proposed to be provided off-site. And have to say that when this application came in, it did include a proposal to use a parcel that was off-site to use to provide these additional spaces. Since that time, that has been found to require more processing, and so it's not included within this application. It would need to be its own application in any case, as it's not connected with the site and is bifurcated by Dixie Highway. A shared parking analysis has been provided by the applicant, which indicates that if we apply Institute of Transportation Engineers calculations to the parking requirements, it reduces the 87 to 71 at peak times during the weekday, and 60 spaces at peak times at the weekends. If this moves forward, then staff are recommending a condition requiring that the site plan for off-site parking is approved prior to any vertical construction taking place at this marina as part of any approval. So the architecture, I have slides, and I think the applicant will describe this in more detail. It has 2 stories of parking, underneath 3 stories of habitable, occupiable space, so hotel rooms, restaurant, and facilities, swimming pool, etc., actually on the 4th floor, excuse me. As you can see, the elevation, and the applicant will describe this in more detail, includes a described opening of the viewpoint through the building from northeast Flagler. The building height is maintained at 45 feet, and that is where we start that measurement, is at the lowest possible finished first floor elevation, and that's described in code of where that starts. And so the building to the eaves then is 45 feet, and then there is allowance in the code for 15 feet additional for any roof lines. And the applicant has confirmed that the roof line will not exceed 60% from the finished first floor elevation. So all that is in compliance with the city's code. The site data, I've put that up just in case we need to go back to it. I've got the site plan, which you see the building fairly covers the whole site. There are access points to a boardwalk which runs in front of the proposal alongside the waterway, maintaining the mangroves in place. There are connections to Northwest Flagler Avenue and landscaping down either side and to the rear. Second floor is primarily hotel rooms. Third floor similar, and fourth floor has a swimming pool, restaurant, kitchen, and there's like a lobby area. So again, that was one of the recommendations that were made, that the restaurant served the hotel guests. So the recommendation with this, from a staff point of view, is to consider the proposal, and if the board are minded to move the ordinance through to City Commission for a first hearing. Unless the board has got any questions of this, then I will hand over to the applicant.
Does the board have questions for staff?
I have one.
I'll wait
Staff.
until, I'll wait till after
All right,
the
Okay.
full presentation.
okay.
So I'll hand over to,
But I did have one for staff. I was wondering as I was reading through this, at what point and what was the rationale of the city commission for putting that kind of restriction on the enclosed parking? If you don't know, you can let me know later.
do you mean why we require applications to come before boards if they have understory parking?
No, why we have a restriction on underground parking?
Well, the restriction is that the condition that if anybody proposes that, it comes back before boards. That was put in place by the City Commission and maybe the CRA and CRB at the time of the adoption of the urban code.
It just, I think to Pete's point, it
Yeah.
seems counterintuitive for urban development to prohibit the,
Yeah,
you know,
I have no
parking
disagreement with
within
that.
the building envelope.
I can't figure out why that would be the case, other than to say in an urban environment, you really don't want, in a downtown environment especially, a street which is just lined with on-street parking. In effect, the viewpoint should be activity from a commercial or restaurant or some other use. So that would be the priority. It's not to say that we don't allow it. It has been allowed, but it's just a process to get that.
Yeah, my questioning was why the process, and more questioning, at what point in the past the city decided they weren't going to allow it.
It-
But,
Probably 2004 when the urban code was adopted in its present
okay.
condition.
So, Mr. McCarty,
Hello, sir.
Right.
Can you hear me? Yes. Pleasure. How are you today?
you have to speak even closer into that mic. I wish they would get a mic where you could.
It's a little hard to hear because this thing's going. So if you
Is that better?
Can you hear that any better?
can, sorta, it's just muffled.
If you want to take off your mask while
Yeah.
you're up there, that would be fine.
Okay. Either that or we can turn it up. I don't know who controls the volume. But
Paul?
at any rate, Mike McCarty from McCarty and Associates. Pleasure to be here this evening representing the applicant. Want to state on the record I've provided the affidavit attesting the notification.
Yeah, I'll take that.
So we provided the appropriate mail-outs and signage notification on site. So as staff indicated, and I'm probably going to be repeating some of the items that staff mentioned, when we were previously here, we had a different program for the property. We went back to the drawing board, took into consideration comments that came from this board, and then from the public and from commissioners. And so we're back here today to share with you the reprogramming. Again, this is a legacy project for these gentlemen. They're local here to Stewart, 3 generations working together. A grandfather trying to pass the torch down to his grandson, David Foster. They're all here with us today. Great family, and hopefully we can make this a success for them. Property's located on the north side of the old Roosevelt Bridge, just north of CapTech's office. We're trying to create a resort, hotel marina that will bring people to downtown, making Stewart a destination. I'm also on the Stewart Main Street Board, and something that we've discussed year after year after year is the lack of resort hotels that we have in Stewart to accommodate people coming to downtown. We just really are lacking in that, and so we believe that this fits a dire need that we have in our downtown. It also, focuses on sport fishing, the marine industry, boating, yachting, and so on and so forth. We're looking at 3 floors of rooms with a restaurant on the top floor with a pool amenity deck. We're still proposing the 49 wet slips that will be open to the public, first come, first serve, as per our submerged land lease with the state. And, the current conditions look like this. This is the old Sailfish Center. It's basically a defunct building that's in very poor shape and disrepair. Copper's been stripped out of it. It's quite an eyesore for the neighborhood over there. And, we're trying to achieve this, vast improvement to the area. This will blend in with the form of development that is already continuing in the north and the south. And we believe it'll be a positive effect on that area in diversifying the type of uses along our waterfront versus the continued loss of our waterfront to condominiums. This is a aerial view looking down on the project with the proposed roof lines. You can see the pool amenity deck and where the restaurant will be located there right next to the pool. You can see some of the landscaping and trees that we've put around the site. You'll also see in this image where graphically this is the extension of the boardwalk. So this piece of property is the missing link, if you will, for the boardwalk, and this will be open to the general public, so this will be a connection valuable connection that will allow that continuation of that boardwalk. You'll see we avoided and minimized impacts to the mangrove wetlands, and so we dodged our dock out through this opening that will provide access to the marina. This is kind of an overall perspective of what we're looking at and how the dock will extend out from the facility to the far side of the Roosevelt, and then provide 49 wet slips. We also anticipate, being able to provide day boater tie up around the perimeter and outside of some of the docks for those that want to patron the restaurant and enjoy the facility. This is our site plan. I know staff already touched on this. When we submitted this application on August 15th, so we're looking just short of, 30 days ago, we were contemplating, this parking calculation of having that 48 spaces on the parking lot across the street. This is our landscape plan. It's very minimal. Obviously, in an urban environment, you're not going to have a whole lot of green space, but the urban district, this is the type of form of development that we want to see and that the code supports. Now, this is where we were contemplating the parking lot. So this is Dixie Highway here, Dixie Highway, and this is Oleander and Poinsettia, and my clients contemplating the acquisition of this said portion of property. You'll see here we provided a site plan layout with basically a two-way drive aisle and then 90-degree parking with some landscape islands in it. Up until last week, everything was looking pretty good, and then we received a comment from utilities that this water main runs through this right-of-way. So this is a 20-foot right-of-way that runs through the property. And what we were contemplating is abandoning this right-of-way and to ultimately achieve this. Public Works came to us into last week, provided comment and stated that this water main would have to be relocated. We also spoke with staff, Kev, and it was determined that this right-of-way might have some challenges and certain procedures that would have to occur in order to abandon. And then we're in our due diligence right now, and we're working through some title items. But basically, as of last week, we're not real sure of how this is going to occur, if it can occur, if it's cost effective or viable based on relocation of a water main and so on and so forth. But we are committed to complying with the parking required. Here's some of the architecture. Before we get to architecture, I just want to go ahead and touch base on the request. So in this UPUD request, we're asking to allow parking within the building envelope, as staff indicated. We're also asking to modify the required visual corridor vista through the development as designed. And we're also requesting to reduce the required parking to 64 spaces, okay? So by going back, I'll let the architect talk about the building and the design and some of the programming, and then I'll come back up and I'll continue with the presentation.
Good afternoon, board members. Brent Wood, local architect, and Stewart, architect for the applicant. Pleasure to be here before you. So, as has been said, this is, I'm sure you remember, this is our second presentation for the project. Last time we presented this project to you, it walked and talked a lot like what we're going to be showing you today, except the sort of the main idea, the main difference is what we presented before you was a hotel that was intended to cater to a specific market, the boating marketplace. So we were going for a less formalized hotel and with more of extended stay or suite type hotel rooms. And what you're going to see today is more of a traditional hotel in its operation and its presentation. So I'll start with the slides we're looking at. The elevation on the top is the west elevation. It fronts the street. On the bottom right corner, where's the light? Where's the thank you. This area here is the lobby. So you can see there's a bit of storefront there and an awning. And when that translates to the ground floor plan, you'll see that the point is to identify a sense of arrival, a sense of entry, and a formal lobby where you would check in, and the normal things you'd expect in a hotel would be in that location. So point is, you know where you're going. The last version of this building really didn't have that. It was intended to be more of a pre-arranged arrival, meaning guests would have done things more digitally, whereas now you're going to check in like you would any other hotel. You know where you're going. There's an arrival point before you enter the building. So as you may recall, the entry from this building would be from the south. So the first point of arrival is the lobby. And so the idea is you check in here. There's queuing for cars street side. And your vertical circulation is within the building. I'll get to that in a second. As you travel left on that drawing or more to the north, so you can see there's openings here. That is the entrance into the parking structure. So it's similar to before, where there's 2 levels of parking. One level is about a half a floor down from street level, so 4.5, 5 feet, approximately where the current shoreline is, exactly like before. The second level is about a half a level up from street. Lobby is at street level. So that just presents a lot of programmatic challenges that we have overcome in the design, but just trying to explain how it works as you would actually experience the building. So parking is both up and down from the street, lobby's at street level. As you go further to the north, more of our services, trash, deliveries, loading, the things that it would take to operate the building on a daily basis are sort of down here, more staff. And the point was to get it away from our lobby. What we presented to you last time was a third-story amenity level. With, again, it was a much less formalized amenity deck. It was on the third level, meaning right on the deck of the garage. Those services, those amenities have moved to the roof of the building now. So they're more integrated with the hotel portion or the guest suites portion. So the building presents itself like before. We've made every effort to break the building scale down. It's a large building. We have tried to accommodate the vistas as much as we can, provided that there's parking, on the street level. So, you've got this double-story opening here that's about 40 feet wide. At its highest point here is 13 feet tall, and it continues up 2 levels above it, and that's about 20 feet wide and 24 feet tall, give or take. So we've exceeded the vista. The vista requirement's 12 feet by 12 feet. We've tried to accommodate as much beyond that as we could to hang on to the intent of the code. The bottom elevation is what you would see from the north side. So really, you're seeing the west elevation, it sort of fades off at an angle. So you're seeing the west elevation here, but this is the north side. So really not very visible from the street. Oh, sorry. And, so street, on this elevation, streets to the right and the water's to the left. So here we've got the riverfront or the east elevation here. And like before, you can see there's a lot of balconies facing the water. This is all hotel rooms, everything you see here, and then parking on the bottom 2 levels, which is sort of signified as a pedestal. We've sort of changed up color, we've changed up texture to try to break up the massing of the building. There's some blank area here, and that's literally a function of the fact that that's the pool. It's a rooftop pool. It extends down to the level beneath it, so we've just tried to articulate and break up the facade as opposed to a blank wall, but it's a pool behind it. And same thing here, south building elevation with the water side to the right and the street to the left. This would be the side of the building where the lobby sort of wraps that corner. And we've also incorporated a ship store, which I'll get into in the plan view. So just to recap the height, the building height, we have street here, and we go down half a level, 4 or 5 feet, to what we call the basement level. That would be the second level of parking here. It's still showing the pool here, but now the pool's up at the 4th level, and then we've got the 3 hotel levels. That's your 45 feet to the roof deck, and we have not exceeded the 15 feet beyond that to any roof, part of the roof, as required by code. So floor plan, ground floor plan, site plan, we've got here is this is your queuing off of the main street. So I figure we've got about 4 or 5 cars being able to be stacked here during the check-in process, check-in, check-out, entry to the lobby here, reception desk, ship store here, about, I think it was around 600 square feet. Some, typical offices and bathroom facilities. So administration for the hotel, bathrooms that would be accessible for guests for both the hotel and the marina component. We were required to provide access from the street to the boardwalk, which is indicated by these lines here, both sides of the building. And the side entrance is accessed right off that. So these bathrooms, there's a couple of bathrooms with showers for marina guests. So you check into the lobby, it's got a grab-and-go marketplace, and then the elevators and stairs getting you up to the guest levels above. These are the ramps. This ramp would go down from street half a level down. This one goes half a level to the second level above us. We've got a full laundry facility here, commercial laundry facility. We've got receiving, and for a lot of the amenities are on the 4th level. So how you service those from the street becomes really critical. So this is where all of those things would happen, where deliveries and trash would happen down here. There's a trash chute, there's a service elevator, and all that happens in an enclosed, secure environment here for staff. There's also a generator room in case of emergencies. This is the parking level above that. So again, half a level up from street. Because this is half a level up and the lobby and some of these services are directly off of the street, they would literally punch through this in order to get the head height that you would need. So you're seeing the sort of open to below there, and then just your standard parking that we've worked out on that level. So the first level of hotel rooms. As you can see, the rooms are much smaller. They're more in that 450 to 500 square foot. Traditional hotel rooms are right about that range. The rooms do vary just simply as a matter of geometry of the building. It's sort of the way the building sort of slices. We could not achieve a regular spacing, so we made it as regular as we could, but there's some variation. So they're much smaller rooms. We did keep some suites on the corners. There's a suite here, and I believe a suite here. So in total, there's 3 suites. 2 suites on this level, and 1 suite on the next level above it. Sorry, that would be one more. There's one on the top level as well, so that would be 4 suites. So this is the first amenity level, or the first guest room level, and what you're seeing here is a terrace where this is the roof of the parking deck. So we haven't quite programmed that out yet, but some sort of a terrace on the street side and the river side. This is the next level above it, with the same guest room layout as the lower level, but then again you see the footprint of the pool reading through, which kind of resulted in a quirky room here on the right side. So the third guest room level from the south side of the building really maintains the same layout of hotel rooms on the south side of the building. From that line north is where the amenities occur. So we've got 64-seat restaurant with an indoor-outdoor bar. Can't remember exactly, but I want to say about 20, 25 seats at the bar. Meeting room, private meeting room. Adequate bathrooms for all these functions, a full service kitchen. So we had before, we just simply called a snack shack. It was a very limited bar, or, poolside grill. This is a real full functioning commercial kitchen. This is a big kitchen. So it can service both the restaurant and all the hotel rooms. And we were really going for more of a, if we're gonna do this rooftop thing, let's really try to give it some punch. So this is a huge open pool terrace here that the bar sort of spills out into. Plenty of room for guests sunbathing, and then 4 private cabanas all facing the eastern river. So thinking in the afternoons, this is just going to be the place to be. I mean, the sun's setting behind you. You're not getting beat up by the you're in some shadows. You're not getting beat up by the sun. We're pretty excited about this. As far as the architecture goes, again, if you remember the last presentation, this walks and talks a lot like it. You can see sort of what we're showing here, those cabanas in the pool area here, and then the hotel room, just sort of all balconies on the water side. Parking garage is this lower half here. It's clearly identified as a pedestal to try to break up some massing. Just a couple of different views from the water. If only our water was truly that blue. and then this is the street side. So again, you've got the lobby under an awning, you've got the ramping going up, the vertical circulation in the center, and then some services down here on this side. And these are all guest rooms here. So these rooms, just due to simple geometry, weren't able to incorporate balconies on those rooms, but 50% of the rooms do have balconies on the street side as well. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions for me, or if Mike want to continue.
I think at this point, we'll just keep going with your presentation, then we can ask them.
Thank you. Thank you, Brent. So, up until we received some comments pertaining to this parking and this issue that we have with water mains, easements, abandonment of right-of-way, and so on and so forth, we were hopeful that this would work. We're still hopeful that it will work, but it's just uncertain at this point in time. Based on that, we're requesting a condition such as this. The applicant shall demonstrate a minimum of 64 parking spaces available by means of either an off-site parking lot or by agreement with adjacent properties prior to CO of the Sportfish Marina. We still have to iron out all these issues, so we're requesting that condition that would guarantee that we have to meet the parking required. Now, as far as the parking calculations, the code as it's currently written, okay? Parking required as per the code is 87. But keep in mind, the way the code is written is it's very separate. So marina needs this many spaces, hotel needs a certain number of spaces, and the restaurant needs a certain number of spaces. That's assuming they're all standalone facilities. Here, they're all internal to the same operations, and the same patrons are enjoying those facilities. So Susan O'Rourke worked with us, and she has done an analysis, and you'll see here the code does not take into account shared parking spaces needed at different times. Internal capture, people staying in hotel are the same people eating at the restaurant utilizing the marina, and a model split where people walking from nearby residences and businesses and ride sharing. Based on the analysis prepared by Susan, we're looking at a required 64 spaces. So we're requesting a reduction of the required parking based on this analysis. Susan O'Rourke is here if you'd like to speak with her. You'd like to expand on that, Susan? Happy to let you speak on that.
I think the issue is that the code, as Mike was saying, is a single-use, kind of a suburban standard, which is used throughout the United States. And there are reductions being put in place now to account for all of these. So basically, I would say that the code is incorrect. And so we're starting with a number that's not reflective of the product that we're bringing to you. And the research and data on this type of product is in short supply. So we always have to come in and look at the body and the industry, what types of relationships, and really look at it, because I think we can all see that it is all integrated, and that the people, when they come down for breakfast, they're not getting in a car and driving to the restaurant. They're coming down an elevator or taking stairs or whatever it is we've got there. And so these are the same people. And if you look at the ITE trip generation for a resort hotel, the per room rate of one per room accounts for all the amenities in the hotel. You don't separate them out. And so we're forced to separate them out and then provide these reductions to show that it actually is much less. So there is a set of tables, a series of tables that show what the adjustments are on internal capture and sharing, and we can get into that. But I think intuitively, you all understand the concept that we're proposing and the logic behind the fact that people can walk from Harborage, people from CapTech can walk there, they're not driving a car. So those are the kinds of things that we've taken in, and we've used industry standards to apply on a fairly conservative side. So if you have any questions on the specifics, just let me know.
Mike, do you have anything else?
Again, this is the condition that we're requesting. You recommend approval of our project, and with this condition that will suffice and give us the flexibility to work out the issues with the parking. It also protects the city and the area and it will ensure that we have adequate parking. This is the development team. If you have any questions, fire away.
Pete, you go first if you have any questions for the
No,
applicant.
Tom, I'll wait for you.
I think I have a quick question.
All right, Katie?
How many staff are you expecting on the property?
I think we were anticipating, what did I had a calculation in there.
You had 7, the code was 2 for every 3, and you had 7.
Yeah, I think I had 7 parking stalls, correct?
But
No,
how many staff members at a time?
I said 2 spaces. The parking hold on one second, 2 spaces for 3 employees. So I had 7 spaces, so I'm anticipating 14 employees in order to operate the marina, the hotel, and the restaurant. And that would be a peak time.
Pete?
I think this is probably for Susan O'Rourke. I'm looking at the separate requirements we have here, and I can see the justification on the restaurant, in that many people are in the hotel rooms, are going to use the restaurant. They're already there, their car's already in the garage, and it's taken care of by the hotel room. How many of those 16 spaces did you knock out in your calculation? You had 16
Oh.
spaces for the restaurant as a standalone.
Correct.
How many did you just kind of configure that they were, that
So we start.
really were coming from the room?
So in this, in order to be consistent with ITE, as I was saying, the body of information is in short supply. So we're using the traffic study internal capture, which is around 9%, 4% in the afternoon and 9%. So that's a small number. So that the reduction was taken across the board, 4% and 9%. And then we took another 5% for proximity, that of the people who might park there, 5% could walk, they wouldn't need a vehicle. So that they're modest reductions. So if
Okay,
we
so it's only 5% then for the walk-ins, which
Right, and I think,
people walk in Stewart, but most times they don't walk that much.
right, so that's why it's a small number, but we do assume, Joe's here, I know he would probably walk across this parking lot. We've got Paul, it's in the back. You're talking, these people can walk from Harborage, these are, so we're talking small numbers. And we're trying to look at it comprehensively, that the hotel, some of those people might fly in and take an Uber to the hotel, some of them would come on a boat, they wouldn't have a car. There's a lot of things in play. If people did come to the hotel, they could ride share. So there's a lot of reductions. We've got the water taxi that comes down the street. We have a lot of options that don't have a real mathematical calculation, so we're trying to apply logic and what standards we have
Okay.
to get there.
Follow-up I have then is on the marina spaces, which are calculated at 13 spaces. Are we looking at cars, or were you guys looking at boats coming in and there being no cars? What's the concept is what I'm thinking of. I'm trying to think to myself, if I'm coming to your restaurant and I'm coming by boat, or I'm boating on the river and I want to go have lunch,
So all
I'm
of
more
those,
than likely not going to have a car.
that's correct.
So why are you requiring 13 spaces for the marina within the code if there isn't any drop and go, for example, on boat trailers? Is there one?
I'm sorry, what's your
You said
question
drop
about boat
and go.
trailers?
Is there drop and go on boat trailers?
Drop and go?
Do you have a boat?
You know what I mean, you
A boat
bring your
launch?
boat in.
We don't
boom.
have a ramp, no. There's
Okay.
not a ramp.
So anybody who gets there is going to be actually on a boat.
Well, you could certainly use the city's ramp, or
We
we also have an agreement, we also
don't
have,
need one, I just
we also
wondering-
have an agreement with Atlantic Point that we're gonna be able to utilize their ramp services as well,
Yeah,
right
I'm just
around the
looking
corner,
at-
and park trailers. But yes,
Yeah, I mean, I'm
people will
looking
be,
at
will
why
be
ca-
coming
why
to the project
cars
by
would
water.
be there in the first place. That's what I'm looking at.
So you're right. See, that's what, we deal with an industry standards, and so you're looking at marinas that function completely different. The rate for the marina is developed for this project, the same it would be for a municipal standalone. So they're all lumped together, and then we're trying to do what you're doing.
I'm trying to massage.
What is logical, and because we don't want to have a sea of parking on the waterfront. We want to make sure we provide for our site, and we don't put a demand on anybody else, but we want to be reasonable.
Okay, the other question I think I have directly is, it seems to me when you go to the Keys, there's tons of marinas and hotel rooms and restaurants, and this kind of concept is there all over the place. Are there standards in those counties or those municipalities for what they do for parking on those?
There
on
are,
those
and it's
facilities?
what the issue is kind of the balance of it. So, as I was saying before, you can have a resort, and the rate would be based on the number of rooms, but that just means someone like me went out and counted the cars in the parking lot and said, there's 100 cars and there's 50 rooms, I'm gonna do 2 per room, or whatever, you know what I mean? And then they didn't break it out into restaurant,
I mean,
marina.
Monroe County, for
So-
example, in Key West, has no standards for, well, I don't get down there, but I'm sure you guys do. There must be some famous place that you book your hotel room, you get your boat, and you pull
Pete, those
in.
were built
and
before
there
we
must be
had
all
codes.
kinds of operations like that down there.
Yeah.
And the Monroe County has no standards for what they do for parking?
We can look into the Keys. We've looked at different rates, but there is a waterfront
Thank you.
resort hotel that has amenities. It's just not something you all have in your code. So, you know,
I'm saying, I'm trying to
yeah,
correlate what the real world has versus our code.
Well, and that's why I'm saying, like, a resort hotel that has restaurants and marinas, maybe it doesn't have, you know, more marina slips than it does hotels, but some kind of relationship. Typically, it's just 1 space per room, or 1.1 space per room, and it accounts for all of the amenities. You don't separate them out.
I got you. So
See what
they
I'm
go by
saying? So
rooms,
they
basically.
go by rooms, and it accounts for all of the amenities.
You're looking at a reduction from 87 to 64.
64.
Is that correct?
That's correct. So-
Um,
I think in the report we submitted, I gave the rate that's used for if you put in ride share spaces, Uber spaces, and we took that out. So that's the difference between what was in the report that went down to 52. The industry standard is for every 1 space, you can get rid of 3 parking spaces. So that's, if you were looking at the report, that's why we have 64 instead of 52.
Okay, now the other question I had then would be for Mr. McCarty. See, I was looking for Tom to actually do all this.
Well, when you're the chair, you go last.
When I'm done, you'll do it? Okay. When I'm chairman, I can do it? No, thank you. Done that. Let's see. You have 50 on site, right?
Yes.
Am I missing any? If this off-site doesn't come through, you still would have to account to make up another 14 or 13,
That's correct.
and you're just gonna wing it until you get it.
Yeah, we're gonna figure it out. We have to. Not only to comply with the city, but if my client's gonna invest $25 million to build this project, he's gotta make it park and he's gotta make it function from a practical standpoint of an investment.
As a point of clarification, whatever number the board sets, the city will not allow them to pull the permit to start construction unless they demonstrate to the development director that not only are they gonna have X
Yeah.
on site, but they have somehow secured the balance off
I
site.
understand that. So it's not a matter of whether or not, at this point, whether we accept the 64 or not. It's a matter of whether or not either way, you're going to have additional parking, right?
Correct.
And I know that the condition that you've put at the end of the parking is not exactly the same one I had in my packet. In my packet, there would be no vertical construction,
That's staff recommendation.
staff recommendation.
Yeah.
Right, as opposed to what you had on your slide.
Yeah,
or
we're
whatever.
requesting by CO.
and you're requesting by CO. So that's something I'm gonna let staff discuss or come up with.
Do you have any other questions for the applicant?
No, sir.
I would like to add, though, we do have a lease agreement for the spaces with CapTech for 10 spaces. We just acquired that, so we have 10 spaces in addition to the 50 in the building.
Can
And
I see
actually,
it?
Sir?
Could I see it?
Sure.
Did Joe give you
We'll
up
just
his
pass
per-
it to the.
Did Joe give up his personal space
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
in return for a seat at the restaurant?
Joe's gonna start driving his boat to work.
There you go.
Can I ask questions while you?
Yes, please, I'm sorry.
The parking spaces that are in front of the building,
Correct.
who owns those?
Those are, they actually fall, ownership is actually within the FEC right-of-way. The parking along the,
Yes, I
Yeah.
counted kind of like 20 quickly there.
yeah, so these parking spaces are within the FEC right-of-way and the Harborage Marina, okay, not the residential
I'll mention.
Yeah.
HOA, but the Marina HOA has the license agreement with FEC for those spaces.
For those.
Yes.
So, something that I'm thinking here is you have 51 rooms and 14 staff. So I was looking at having, hopefully it'll be full, multiple weekends. So that's 65 spaces, roughly. What is your plan for people in the community who want to come to the restaurant? How are you going to keep them from parking in these other people's spots? What, have you
Well, the
thought about
spaces,
that?
the spaces currently, they're all signed, and they say no parking, and they're only for the harborage, and they're booting and towing cars, is from what I've been told, so.
Okay. Are you, if you take the piece of property across the street, are you gonna do valet for that lot across the road?
That is a possibility to provide valet services. It is only 600 feet walk distance, so it is reasonable walk distance.
Just want to clarify
Yeah.
something for Katie. I just want, when we do that, we say there's this many people, and they're going to do, the employees, they don't all need to drive, and the one thing is that the peak time when you need all the spaces doesn't occur necessarily at the same time, and that's why we look at that, the site as a whole, that when people are asleep at night is when the hotel rooms are full, but the restaurants will be closed by then. So, you know what I mean? Like, those people won't
yeah,
need them. So
I'm in
that's
agreement.
kind of the thing. Same with your employees. You'll have a reduced staff at that time.
I'm in
and
agreement with
so-
your number. I just think that when you have weekends when you're full in the community, you're actually losing that business of people coming, local people. coming,
Absolutely.
Because the hotel residents would probably have priority of a parking spot, I would hope.
Yeah.
As far as the
And I
hotel
think
goes.
that's what all good businesses want to do. They want to have what they're required, and then they want to have contingencies for those times, but not necessarily in the building envelope. So,
Does anyone else have questions for the applicant?
As we're on the parking thing, I have a couple things I wanted to just clarify. The boat slips that you have are not the day docks that were referred to earlier, where people pull up and go to the marina and go to there and stay in the hotel and all that. Those are gonna be leased to people on a first come, first time basis, is what you said. Is that correct?
We haven't come up with the exact programming of the operations of the marina, but yes, the actual slips themselves would be paying customers. The actual day boating would be around the outside.
On the outside, which
Yeah,
is
the
where I
outside
saw
where you
that
can
on
just
there.
tie up side mooring along the side of your vessel, throw a rope around the cleat, put out a bumper, go have a beer.
Right, so if someone had a slip there, then, and they wanted to go out in their boat, they live in Palm City or wherever, then they would need to find a parking space and get their stuff on their boat and then go out. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the whole picture here.
Yeah, that could be one scenario, yes.
And you're accounting for 14 people to come at one time to do that. And that is not something that was a shared parking thing that was put in. Those 14 spaces are not part of the shared parking
Yeah,
thing.
they are. I mean, when we looked at the shared parking, we look at when is the peak demand for all of these uses, and that reduced us down, whatever that number was. I think it took us down 12 spaces, saying that they're not all, that's just based on time. That would,
Right.
and just the operation that all of those people aren't coming to boat at the same time.
Because the people, the hotel will fill in, the people will be there probably all on the weekend. I mean, that's when you're going to get most people are going to be doing all of those things on a Sunday to go to the sandbar or whatever they're doing there, or Saturday. And so I just don't, personally, I don't see how that fits into the shared parking part. I get it 100% with the hotel and the restaurant and all that, the shared parking that goes there. I really don't understand how you can do that with the marina. And my last question about that is, are there liveaboards also? There'll be no liveaboards?
No, none.
Okay, then that isn't a question.
Okay. Pete, one more before I.
Follow up on Frank's question, because he's really hit one of the things that I guess I didn't hit with the marina. People are always scrambling for places to put their boats. If you take all, how many spaces do you have in the marina? 46?
49.
49. Does that count the outside
No.
drop-ins?
No.
So, Susan, I really, living in Stewart, have this real feeling that that Frank's hit upon the thing. People are going to lease those spaces if you allow them to lease those spaces, and they are going to arrive by car.
That's certainly possible.
a lot
Keep
of
in
it-
mind that the standard
A lot of
code,
it's going to depend on the standard that you set for how many spaces you will lease.
well, the code,
Once you do
remember,
that,
the
it
code only
starts.
requires 10 spaces for the entire marina, as it's written in the code, 10 spaces.
It says 13
And
on here.
there's a lot of, people that put a boat in a marina, and they go to that boat maybe once a month. It's not everybody running at once to go get on their boat. So I think that's what Susan is saying, is that there's different peak times of demand.
But that's why there's not 39. I don't want to keep hitting on this thing, but
Yeah,
that's
I
why.
gotta say, Frank's right. I mean,
Nick.
you got 13 spaces for 49 slips. If you lease out 49 slips, okay, you're gonna have 13 people arrive by car. Now, if you hold those slips and only, how many are you required to do?
How many
By
spaces?
your submergible lease, whatever it is.
All the slips have to be open to the public. So, we anticipate a certain programming of that marina will be used for people that are actually staying in the hotel, that are coming down and bringing their yacht from the northeast for the sailfish season, and they're going to park their boat there in the marina, and they'll also be staying in the hotel. Okay?
Yeah, I understand that concept. The other concepts I've got in my head is, or vision I have in my head, is that if you allow all 49 spaces to be leased, as, that on a given weekend, you will have more than 13 cars piled up to use their boat. Which seems to me, Susan, I don't know how you can mitigate that 13 for the marina if
Well, all I say,
the only thing that mitigates that leasing, that those 13 spaces, is some kind of cap on the leasing of the slips.
well, I think if you have to think about it too, like, that we're breaking it up and acting like they operate separately. So we have a finite building, we have a finite number of rooms, a finite number of seats. So the restaurant can't be filled with all of the people, like, the likelihood that they're all going to be different people is non-existent, right? We know that. So, you know, if the concern is that people are, the numbers, the industry data on marinas is pretty good. That the one space per 5 slips, and that accounts, aside from 4th of July and Memorial Day, when, you know, people want to use their boats. But for the most part, the data is very good, and so we can think of what if this and what if that, but that's one that we have a lot of data that says that's a good number. And the fact that those people, you know, are likely to be the same people as described, I mean, we can't know for sure how this thing is going to pan out. And I think that's where the concept, we'd like to have the reduced number. We'd like to get the lease with the neighbors, like we've got the 10 with Joe Capra. And then, you know, these guys will continue to look for those, because on the 4th of July and on Memorial Day or whatever, they do want to be able to provide for the people they lease to. But we don't want to have that all year long when we feel we're not going to need it, and it would be,
Pete, I think you beat this horse to death, so
Okay.
I'm gonna have
I'm gonna
Nick
go ahead and stop, but I had one more comment, and that would be
Comment or a question of the applicant? If it's a
question of
comment,
question of Susan, and that's it.
okay.
These 13 spaces, there's 1 per 4, 49 slips.
it's actually 1 per 5, and then we had like 3
It's 1 per
employees
4.
thrown in there, I think is what came down
Fine.
to, so.
Anyway, and that is the industry standard for marinas
For
where
wet slips,
spaces
yeah.
are leased. Is that correct? Or is
Yes,
it-
yes.
It's used by marinas
It-
that are basically leased marinas.
Leased marinas. I would have to verify if it's leased or,
Okay.
you know,
Okay, Frank, I'll give it up. I mean, no, Tom, I'll give it up.
Okay, so, just, if you wanna wait, Nick, go right ahead now.
Yeah, so I've got a couple questions, and I probably have, I mean, first of all, the concept of this project, I really like. I live across the street off Palm Street. It's a great concept. I grew up in the Keys. I have friends in the Keys that try to come up here with their boat, and they have nowhere to stay. Like, I'm your guy for this project. There are some concerns. I probably have a little more faith in the market when it comes to parking. It's gonna be a problem for you guys. You're gonna have to figure it out. You're gonna have to play nice with your neighbors. You know, I like that this is all under one ownership, so this isn't a condo project. It's not gonna be rounding up, 51 residences to get a quorum, to get a vote, to say this is how we're gonna handle it. If the city has an issue, there's gonna be a guy or gal on the other end of the line that says, that gets that code notification or gets that issue and deals with it. So, I still have an issue with the parking. So I've got a question for staff at this point. There's a water main that is running underneath this easement area or this right-of-way. Do we know how big that water main is? Do we know what it's serving? Do we know? I understand this was a fairly short, kind of last-minute monkey wrench thing.
Well, I did ask the applicant to contact Public Works to figure out all the issues with that. I don't know if they found out what the dimensions of the main were.
Yeah, we reached out to him. We haven't heard from Mark.
Okay, because when I saw, in my package, there was an off-site parking spot, an off-site parking area. It made sense. There's, it's accessible by valet. When you and I talked, my concern is putting, having a lease agreement that says we have parking in Timbuktu doesn't do you any practical good. So I think this off-site parking arrangement needs to be geographically reasonable to this site to be able to accommodate that off-site.
The city has looked at that right-of-way, not just for their site, but for other sites up and down that road. The city did in fact abandon the right-of-way in the property right on the corner, I don't even know what the name of the street is, where you turn to go to the deck restaurant right there.
Yep.
Little business
It also
there.
abandoned it on the north at the Talk House.
And up by the Talk House, but only there's still an easement, so you could put a parking lot, but you can't put a building. So it is a legitimate water main and a utility easement, but it would not be prohibitive to put some type
mean, if we be here today and that would be the plan, then, you know, when that was part of this PUD, then it'd be a no-brainer. I mean, it's within, you know, it's within a reasonable walk, like I would park there and walk to this. So, you know, that being that issue, you know, obviously there's been changes to the Harbridge Condo Association over the years as kind of a result of trying to figure out some of the problems up there. I heard from some of the residents of the condo association. Did you talk to, you know, the association, any of its residents, you know, that sort of thing?
Yes, sir. I did contact some of the members of the Harbridge Association, actually Paul and Robin, and offered to meet with the board and present the project and bring our team to meet with the board at one of their meetings. The board decided that they did not want to take up our offer on that. However, I did offer to have a Zoom meeting with any members or residences of the Harbridge, and we did in fact have a Zoom meeting with them where we shared all of our drawings, everything that you see here, and we discussed their concerns and resolved 99% of their issues. The one issue we can't resolve is their own within the Harbridge, unfortunately. So, yes.
Okay. So, you know, relative to that, and you know, I did hear from Paul and you know, sorry, Robin. You know, I think it's always a good thing when a developer reaches out to his neighbors, their neighbors, because, you know, getting out ahead of issues before it has to come before a board is the best way to handle these things. Now, that's a two-way street. If there wasn't any, you know, if there wasn't any response to your request for a meeting, then, you know, that's not a neighborly way to handle that. And, you know, you guys have the right to build on your property something at some level, and, you know, by reaching out, in my opinion, you know, you guys have covered your base and you've done what your neighborly duty is. And to clarify a couple more points, so the boardwalk at 8 feet, that's similar to the current boardwalk that goes throughout the rest of the Harbridge, and that will connect without any kind of obstruction, you know, all the way through.
That's correct. And we're also going to tie in the seawalls at the
Okay.
two ends of the property, so it'll be, you know, DEP required. The seawalls tie into one another, cohesive.
The height of your building relative to, say, a CapTech building, I mean, it seems similar from the drawings and the renderings. Is there any kind of, have we looked at like what the height of a CapTech building is, or some of the other buildings there? I know they're all 4 stories.
We did our best to figure that out, but we don't have, there's a lot of information that comes into play, like where did they begin from? We know where they're allowed to begin from, but without their full development package, it's really hard to tell. We know what the code says, and we've gone to what the code says that we can do. And they're similar. We believe we're very close, but I couldn't tell you 100% we're exactly what they are. I mean, we've done 3D modeling in the last presentation. We showed some of those images, and we believe we're right there with them, but I just don't have their full drawing sets for both of those buildings to our north and south. Can I offer one more thing?
Sure.
Back to parking. I just want to put it out there. We're talking about all these numbers. Hotels do not operate on 100% capacity. They do not. A hotel at 85% capacity is a really happy hotel operator, and most of them are in that 60 to 80% range. So when you're thinking about these numbers, keep that in mind. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Dick?
No, I
Okay.
don't know.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to make a motion so
No,
that we
because
can
we're
then
not
get
there yet.
public
We didn't
comment?
get to discussion yet.
Okay, I was
Let's finish
gonna-
with the applicant, and then we can, if you want to make a motion, then we can have a motion for discussion.
That's what I would do.
Okay, but
Can I
not
ask
right
one-
quite
Go to
yet.
public
I
comment.
still need to ask my questions.
Oh, okay, right.
Can I ask one quick question?
Hi, Dios mío,
It's
go.
really, this is quick. How many proposed
you
parking
have
spots
any?
for that space there?
You must have some. I do.
Well, again, that concept, that site plan that you see there on the screen, that was our initial submittal that was made on August 15th. That contemplated a two-way drive aisle with, I believe it was 48 parking spaces, but we did have only a 3.5-foot
coming to half of
landscape
it?
buffer, okay? And staff reviewed it, and they also have some changes that they'd like to see with that layout, possibly a one-way with 60 degrees. So we're going to lose parking there. And then with this water main issue and how we deal with this right-of-way, we don't know if it's,
Are you thinking half of this 24?
I'm sorry,
I mean,
ma'am?
I think it
You
gets
get half.
done or it doesn't. It's either 49 or 0 out of that.
I think it'll be closer to 40 if we do a 60-degree one-way. It's closer to 40 spaces. But we just don't know if that's even going to work because we have this right-of-way and water main issue.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Shoot. Mike, I gave the, your agreement to, she'll make a copy and then give it back to you. Okay? And I have a question, and maybe Joe can pop up if you want. Joe, how many parking, you're giving them 10 parking spaces? How many do you actually have? And how are we doing this? Is it 24/7? If it's 10 hours a day, what is it?
Well, I'm giving them the use of spaces valet. First of all, it's Joe Capper for the record. Okay, and I'm talking about the Captech building next door to the site on the south side. So we're giving them spaces, and we're giving them during the peak hours spaces.
So-
And so we have, if you look at the spaces we have out there currently, there's about 24 spaces that we have access to, both on the aisle, main aisle, and underneath the building.
So when you say peak, because it's not in the agreement, could you tell us what it is so we can?
It's after 6 o'clock.
Okay,
and
so
to the-
6 to say, is there a,
Well, we don't really have a problem with overnight, but what I pretty much restricted it to the operation of the restaurant.
okay, so it's restaurant hours, is that 7 days a week?
Yeah, plus weekends. They have
So
access.
it's 7
during-
days a week?
Yes, but no, it's 7 days a week, but just so you know, the weekends, they have use of the spaces throughout the whole weekend, okay? We didn't
Okay.
restrict the weekend.
Because I think that's important to know that.
Right.
And is that, I didn't see that in the agreement, so we could make that a condition without it having a problem? Kev, did you want to add?
Yeah, just one comment on that. We'd have to look at the parking requirements for Captech as a use. We'd also look at, I've got some discrepancy with the parking analysis and the peak times.
Okay,
which-
let me finish with Joe,
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah.
okay. I don't have any other questions for you right now, Joe. And that would be valet, correct, Mike? His spaces are valet spaces. Okay, all right. You know, all my questions were about answered. I feel a lot better with this one than I did the last one. I'm still got a little problem, but we'll discuss that amongst us. There's nothing more you can add to us. Kev, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Susan, on the report that I saw last, it showed two peak periods, one during the weekday at lunchtime and at the weekend after 6 p.m.
That's correct. So, and we use the shared parking to develop a rate, not necessarily the times, because that particular, again, we're using an industry rate that goes hour by hour, and it shows the lunchtime is the peak. But this, I think most of you all are thinking this is, as he was saying, a happy hour, nighttime thing. So, we believe the number to be in the right place, but that it might be at a different time.
Okay. If nothing else, did you want to make a motion now?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for staff recommendation for discussion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Nick seconded. Okay. I think we'll take public comment. I have one card. Anybody else? Okay, Lauren Carroll.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Lauren Carroll. I'm an attorney with Ross, Earl, Bonin, and Enser here in Stewart. Our address is 789 South Federal Highway, Suite 101, right here in Stewart. And we represent the Harborage Yacht Master Association, Incorporated. I'm here today to put the association's objection to this project on the record, as well as request that this board reject the application as submitted. As you know, the applicant is seeking, among other things, variances to the Land Development Code, which would allow them to, first, have 50 parking spaces within the building envelope, and two, accommodate the required vista within the elevation and structure of the building. The applicant also proposes an additional 40 parking spaces to be provided off-site, the details and plans for which are to be determined at a later time. So the applicant is requesting approval of a project without the requisite parking in place. It is our position that this is unwise and that a condition of any approval of the application should be a contemporaneously submitted parking site plan. In our opinion, it is evident, based upon the submissions of the applicant, that the proposed project is too dense for this parcel and the surrounding area. Not only does the applicant seek a variance to have the 50 parking stalls, but it also proposes the off-site parking in an unknown location and manner. The off-site parking in general, along with the option presented by the applicant today for off-site parking, is not feasible. And it is also not realistic and presents significant logistical and safety concerns for both the association and the city. This board may recall that parking at the Harbridge was and still is a huge problem. Harbridge is already completely overburdened by two-way traffic along the entirety of Flagler Avenue, and in some instances, owners have actually been hit or brushed by passing vehicles. So, adding parking for Sportfish Marina, which is just south of Harbridge, by using a lot to the north of Harbridge will only create more traffic throughout the community, exacerbating a years-long problem, this traffic being both by vehicle and by foot. If the off-site parking were to be located across the railroad tracks, which, as we've heard today, it is, how would patrons cross over? Would they walk? Would there be a tram? Would there be valet? We've heard that there's a request for valet, or there's a suggestion that valet might be available, but we don't know if that's for sure. It's just a suggestion. These are all questions that the community and this board don't have concrete answers to, and the association, as an entity whose members will be directly affected by this decision every day, ask that this board deny the application and require the applicant to submit a detailed site plan for this off-site parking. As the applicant indicated to you today, the parking situation is uncertain, and this board shouldn't approve an application on off-site parking that is, in fact, uncertain. Finally, the applicant proposes that this board approve and forward ordinance number 2464-2021 to the City Commission, which contains the following recital, and I quote, "Whereas the Sportfish Marina UPUD development will be in harmony with surrounding properties in their anticipated development. As presented and proposed to this board today, the Sportfish Marina UPUD is not in harmony with the surrounding properties, especially Harbridge Yacht Master Association and its 9 separate condominium buildings, which contain approximately 130 units and 250 Stewart residents. A decision by this board in favor of the applicant would be an uninformed one and would be contrary to the tenets of the City Land Development Code."
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Paul, come up and speak and fill out a card.
I'm a resident, Paul Nunley, I'm a resident at the Harbridge, and, you know, I know the attorney just spoke, but I just want to talk about, I walk by that property every day. It's nothing but an eyesore. It's dilapidated, there's rats living in it, it's one step away from homeless people living there, okay? I don't like it when I walk by there every day. So, in reference to the project that's coming up, we were excited when we saw the sign go up, and I called Mike, and he gave us a presentation and told us everything. We did have concerns. We had concerns about parking. I see that the parking concerns have been addressed. They're in the PUD. They can't get a CO without the parking being established. So therefore, as a resident, my wife and I would love to see that project happen.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul,
Okay.
Tom, can I ask a question of,
Not a Paul, that's over.
okay.
No, Paul.
I'm going to
Okay. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, it comes back to the board for deliberation.
Mr. Chairman, I have one thing I have to ask the city attorney about. It's an ex parte. I did speak with Deborah Ross of their attorney's firm. And so she
this
called,
matter?
on this matter, and it had slipped my mind because it was a very short conversation. And
Okay, but you've already
I
put it
already,
on the record.
right, no, I have to bring it up
Put it
because
on
it
the record.
occurred.
It's
And
fine, Frank, it's fine, you put it on the
I'm
record.
still okay. I
Yes.
didn't say it at the beginning. I said it
Yes.
just now. Okay, that was my question.
Does anyone else have any ex parte communication?
God, no.
I've spoken with the applicant. I'm here with an open mind.
Anyone else?
No.
I've spoken with staff and I'm here with an open mind. Okay, all right, yes, Pete?
I have one for staff. We have moved this ordinance the way it's written. And I feel very comfortable, I think, with the parking. A question I had, when we approve the way this is, what language will there be in there to make sure that the parking happens as it should? Is it in there already?
There is a condition in there now which provides that the applicant secures 40 off-site, 40 off-site parking stalls on property that they control prior to any vertical permits are being issued on the site. The applicant is proposing that that be changed with the condition that you see before you on the screen.
Say that again. Are we doing the conditions?
The
Well, it's up
motion
to-
I
that's up to the
thought
board.
was as per
Yeah.
staff's
Yeah.
recommendation.
So it's
For
your-
discussion,
Okay, I'm under discussion on this one, actually.
right.
Yeah.
So what we've got under discussion right now is staff, which is the original
Yes.
vertical construction,
Yes.
uh,
And 40 spaces,
and 40 spaces.
yes.
What do we look at? Now, I'm very convinced by Susan and some of the others that this tying together of all three uses and the spillover stuff onto each other, that the one after another up to the 87, is it?
Yeah.
Something?
87 people.
Yeah.
87, is probably higher than they need. What happens if were you looking to make some accommodation?
Well, that's up to the
As
board
staff.
to decide. The board should determine what is the appropriate number of parking stalls required for this development.
So in other
And
words,
then the
we
board
should be
should,
determining right now what we
Yes.
want
Yes,
in
during
there.
this
Yes.
deliberation, that's our job.
and the board should also determine the best mechanism to secure that prior to occupancy of the building.
So straight zoning would allow people to go in under straight zoning and build certain things there, and they would have to comply with parking setbacks, et cetera. And they could do that without coming before the board, without doing anything. One of the things that this applicant is seeking is a deviation from the code that allows them to put parking under the building, because our code prohibits that. Another thing that this applicant is seeking is a deviation from the code as it relates to the total number of parking spaces. So just as the board is contemplating granting a deviation for parking under the building, they're asking you to contemplate or consider deviating from the total number based upon the evidence they've presented and the benefit of the board, discussing it and deliberating it, determining what's the best interest.
So we're not all over the place. They had 3 requests. Mike just put them back up. Let's discuss one at a time and see whether we're going to include them. First one is to allow parking within the building envelope. Does anyone have problems with that?
No, but I do have a
that's within
comment.
staff's.
I do have a comment on that, and it was based on the question about when did that come about? That was a special thing?
2004, apparently.
No, it was way before that, because when Dwani came in and gave his presentations, he had a specific name for those types of buildings, and it was called the dingbat. And this was back in the 1990s, that particular thing came into the code, just a point to notice.
We're getting kind of late in the tooth, and we have other things on, so I'd like to keep this moving. Does anyone have a problem with allowing it within the building envelope? If the answer is no, I'm going to ask the motioner whether we can put that, whether we can accept that as a condition. That's you,
I
Frank.
believe the motion was for staff's
Recommendation, but
which
this is,
includes-
Which includes
does that
that.
include that?
That
Okay.
includes that.
And it includes the
Right.
next one as well.
Okay, does anyone have a problem with the visual corridor vista?
No.
I have one question on that. Sorry, Mr.
Good
Chair.
Lord, Frank.
The vista, what's the distance between the road and the top of the parking structure there? My question is, and I don't have a problem with it, I'm just curious, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but that is something I thought about yesterday, and
If you could do it real quickly so we can.
just if you can just give me an estimate. Is it 5 feet,
Okay.
6
So,
feet?
From the crown of road to the floor above is approximately 5 feet, let's say that. And
Okay, that's good enough.
that's all you need?
That's all I need.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
I have no problem.
And then, Mike, put it back for the final. Yes, sir. Okay, so I'm going to go first because I do have a problem with the required parking, the way it's being set up. I don't know if the 64 spaces is the right number, but I do have a problem that we approve a project without a site plan that includes the 64 spaces. So I don't know if I can vote for something because we don't know what it is. And even though we're not going to let them build or give them a building permit until that's included, I still feel that as a board, the reason it comes to this board is because we're supposed to look at these things before passing them on to the commission and say whether it's in line with what the exception should be. They're asking for an exception without giving us all the information to make that case. We do have the parking study, and that's great, and we can discuss whether 64 spaces are the right number. I just don't like it when we don't know where the spaces are. Tomorrow, we can approve this, and the commission could say, you know what, they approved it, we're gonna approve it too. And then, when they come in, that parking lot is across the bridge in downtown Stewart. I mean, we just don't know where it is, and I don't think it's right to rush this. There's no rush. And perhaps we need for this to come back, and we can give him, if he needs another month to get his spaces lined up, so that we can present a full packet. I mean, I hate to vote against it because of something so silly, but it isn't really silly. And so I'm going to, if anyone feels differently, I'm sure everyone here does feel differently, but I'm going to request that that this come back to a date certain, whatever Mike decides he needs to get his lease for the rest of the parking spaces, and that it's spelled out.
Okay, let me,
Mr. Chairman,
you can go.
Go ahead, Pete.
I love it when you take charge. Stu Hershey used to do that all the time.
Now you're confusing me with Sue?
Yeah, you're getting there. I agree with most of your sentiment on it. I think there's been a real solid argument made here that the 87 spaces that I have in my packet are not accurate compared to a combined use, okay? And I think we need staff to take a good, hard look at Susan's numbers. I mean, I know you're going to need spaces regardless of what you do. I mean, you've got 51, you've got 10 from Joe. You're still short of your 64 regardless of what you do. You're going to have to come back with more spaces. And I'm perfectly all right with approving a no vertical construction, if that's what your staff is happy with, as opposed to theirs, which is CO, I believe. I'll go along with staff. I mean, that's fine with me. But I would have liked to have had a recommendation in light of the parking study of what is reasonable. Is 64 the right number? Is it the wrong number? How does staff feel about it? I do not want to put 87 spaces in there, and I don't want to put 64 spaces in there without input from staff. Now, if that requires bringing it back, I'm not concerned that they're going to cut their own throat by having spaces across the bridge or anything like that. I think this is a little silly, but I do think Tom's right in this basic question. We need to have some kind of staff input on how many spaces do these guys have to find in light of the parking study and the reasonableness of the presentation with regard to these 3 separate uses and 3 separate requirements versus a mixed-use kind of thing. And so my question to staff is, do you have one?
Well, I would then defer to the peak rate parking analysis that was.
I can't hear you.
That I would defer to the peak rate parking analysis that was provided by the applicant, which showed that 71 spaces would be required at peak times. Notwithstanding the other methodology, as staff, we've supported that type of analysis before on other developments, not gone down this far in terms of shared parking. So I'm not sure how comfortable commission would be with us reducing that percentage of required parking. I understand it. I support the analysis of use for shared parking, and we've used this all over the city. And the normal way of doing it would be to look at the peak requirement of these and apportion the spaces accordingly. So in that report, it showed 71 being the peak
Then you are
parking requirement.
comfortable with saying 71 is a number that you as staff director can support?
I would be comfortable in actually using other analysis to support that and other approvals to determine that that would be the correct thing to take to the commission, yes.
Okay, then I would support, let me ask the question. I would support the motion with the change from 64 to 71, if that is staff recommendation.
64 isn't staff recommendation.
No, I
They're
understand.
saying they
Right.
would take 71, though.
I understand.
Instead of 87, 71, I would support that, because I believe that their logic has been, I think it's been reasonable, basically, that it should be lower than that, and we ought to have some kind of information from Monroe County with how the hell they do their marinas and their hotel rooms.
Village of Alvarado is probably a better
But
place.
the other question I have, one more question. If they come up with spaces, and you feel, never mind. I don't know I don't know how you change it if we pass it, whatever,
Katie?
but that's where I stand.
I'll make it quick. I'm willing to support the 71 with staff's recommendation and the vertical to get it passed. Because I see if they have to find parking that's further away, I see that as their problem to figure out how they're gonna either commute valet. That's not our issue, that's their issue to find out. So I support the 71 but with vertical construction.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just going to say, I don't think we should approve projects that aren't 100% complete.
I
Without
had,
knowing where those other spaces are coming from, we don't know, we don't have a complete project. And if I came to you and said, I'm putting together 3 parcels, but I only have 2 now, I'm working on the 3rd, can you approve this project? And I'm just hesitant to do these things, and I think it does a disservice to the commission to push things up without having everything. But I understand everybody who said that, so I'm gonna ask that, will the motioner take the 71 spaces in his
well,
motion?
I have some other things I
Well,
wanted
I
to add
just-
to it also.
You want, okay,
I'd like to
go ahead.
throw a couple.
Yeah,
So
Comment.
Mike Mortell touched on this, inherently as a landowner, you have rights and you have the right to do things. And so the variance that we're looking at here today is, building within a building envelope, modifying the visual corridor vista through the development as designed, and, you know, some debate about how many parking spaces. To Tom's point, if this was a straight zoning deal, or like to address your point, if this was a straight zoning deal, we'd never see it. So I agree that, like, having something brought to this board that is not complete is not good practice. And, you know, if Mike submitted a site plan application for the off-site project, you know, for the off-site parking lot a month ago, you know, is that enough time for staff to review it and get all the comments back and, you know, make it part of this package? I mean, I'd feel a lot better if we were approving that site plan, you know, along with this site plan, and Public Works had gotten back to you, and you'd have a license agreement or an easement and a deed, or, you know, whatever way it would work. But in my mind, approving this subject to you finding parking somewhere is no different than a straight zoning deal. So I can get over that. You know, I think that it is in harmony with the surrounding developments. It's similar in height. It's a marina. It's a restaurant. The only thing that it's introducing that the Harbridge doesn't already have, because the Harbridge already has off-site parking, the only thing that it's introducing that the Harbridge doesn't have is a hotel. So I do agree that that is a great site for a hotel, and we need a hotel in downtown. So in that theory, I can get over that comment. I'd also, you know, I've heard from, I'm also curious how you know, if there was a vote through the entire Harbridge and every resident got to cast a vote relative to supporting or denying this project, or if there was, you know, like, I haven't seen enough to say that there's 250 people that live there that are objecting to it. The one other public speaker here that lives in the Harbridge, was in favor of it. So I guess what I'm asking is that if staff's going to put weight on an attorney's objection to this, that there be some sort of minutes from the record of the condo association saying that, you know, we as the condo association have voted, you know, and where the yays and where the nays. As far as conditions or, you know, other items relative to this specific application, I think there's a couple things. So the parking lot needs to be constructed prior to the CO. Like, having an arrangement to, you know, one day build something somewhere doesn't pass the, you know, application of making it, you know, doesn't pass the test. I also think that it needs to be within a certain number of feet of the project. So to Tom's point, you can't go find parking on the other side of the bridge. The site as proposed was 600 feet away. You know, I think that's a reasonable stretch. I think it should be measured by, you know, pedestrian walking. So, like, you don't have a scenario where, you know, like the parking lot that's adjacent to the PA Barbecue Plaza is technically owned by the Harbridge and, you know, supposed to function as some sort of overflow parking, but the practicality is that it never ends up getting used because it's just too far away. But, you know, I am disappointed to see this come forward without a complete package, without there being, you know, this off-site parking lot agreed to and set in stone and figured out. But I do support the concept, and I do support the idea, and if we can agree on a required distance that off-site parking be, if we can agree that it be constructed prior to CO, so those parking spaces are in place. I also think that staff needs to review and come up with some sort of requirement for the term of that lease and the, you know, ability for that to prove a permanent solution. Then I can support this and at least move it along to the next level in the same respect that people have rights by zoning, and this, you know, it complies by use, it complies by all but these three, you know, items here. And, you know, I trust the market maybe more than some others. You guys aren't going to be able to figure out how to build this thing if you don't have that parking figured out. So, you know, I don't want to be the one that holds you up in that process, but, you know, that's, you got your work cut out for you.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this back. Hold it, Frank. Before I ask you several questions, are you willing to accept the 71 spaces in your motion?
that isn't going to be what my change of motion is going to say.
Okay, so you're not willing to accept. Okay, so what's your change?
I withdraw my second.
Oh, okay,
That takes it off the table.
Okay,
all right, so we need another motion.
I'll make a motion that we take the conditions that are in there, the building envelope, the visual vistas, okay, and that 71 as per staff recommendation. And then, Nick, I think you had a few conditions you wanted with regard to the construction of the parking lot?
Within so many feet.
I think the parking lot needs to be constructed within so many feet of the site. I think the construction needs to be, of the parking, needs to be completed prior to the CO. And I think staff needs to ensure that the term of the lease or the securitization of that parking is.
I can't hear the last part of that.
Sorry, the securitization of that parking is permanent enough to where it's not here one day and gone tomorrow.
In other words, it can't be a week and a half.
Okay, with those
So-
conditions, then I make my motion.
All right, so that's a good that's a
I'll
good
add something
motion.
else if you'd like it.
But do you want to second it?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, so just want to ask Kev. Is that something you want to handle? About how many feet away it should be and how many?
It's at the board's discretion. Obviously, the commission needs to sign off on that as well.
yeah,
But then it becomes a perpetual management of how this thing operates in future, and staff.
Well,
Could
just to
yeah,
clarify, I think that these things need to be resolved, like that number of feet needs to be made part of this ordinance, before it goes to the next
Yeah.
hearing.
I mean, I agree with the chair, with the vice chair, in that the best scenario for this would be for the whole package to be resolved, for the parking to be in the agreement part of the package. It would not form in itself a site plan with the PUD, but it would form a conditioned package or a agreement or allocation of use elsewhere as part of the PUD. That's when essentially you would secure the distance, you would secure the use of the parking, and you would, have the whole thing wrapped up as one. So staff's obvious preference in this is that you would have everything lined up, that when staff brought it to the board, that it would be a whole package, that you would understand that the parking had been supplied, the number of parking, where that parking was, and that would be formed in the agreement of the PUD. Obviously.
Well, and I just
Yeah.
want to point out that if we were voting on the site plan for the adjacent park or the off-site parking, we wouldn't be having this debate right now because they would have 95 parking spots.
89, I think.
No, it's 51 on site and 40.
51
49
and
off-site.
Yeah.
as
it was
it's currently
48
done.
off-site, yeah.
So, that's why, when I read the package, I was like, all right, sweet, we got it solved. There's a solution. This makes sense. I see how this works. And then, then that wasn't the case. And you guys, as I understand it, have it under contract. You have control of it. You submitted an application. So,
You want to add
I'd
something,
really like
Mike?
to see that happen.
We're willing to go along with the 71 spots, we appreciate that. A distance requirement, we'd be acceptable to something around 800 feet, I think is reasonable for valet and/or walk distance. Good with the trigger being vertical construction. And now the other thing is that we might lease some land or lease spaces. So we'd like that flexibility in there as well in order to make the numbers work. Thank you.
Well, here, let me just, can I comment now?
You may.
All right, thank you. I really liked the idea when you were going to build that parking lot that actually added more parking to the neighborhood. Because there are real problems in that neighborhood during the season for people parking. And my daughter lived there. I was there a lot during the season, and I saw it. And to have, and I like that. I mean, I thought, okay, fine, if that's there, then I got the understanding that, no, that's not there. And so what I had was going to propose we put in is that there be a 3 to 5 minute walk in order to get to the thing. That there's no shared parking for the marina, because I don't think that's going to work. I think that there's shared parking for all those other uses, but the marina, the sharing of the marina parking is going to create a problem in the future, and that's just my thinking on that. I definitely like the idea that you come back with a complete plan and show us where you're going to do it. I wish the heck that you would work out the issue, with the water line, because then you're actually improving the neighborhood. You're going to create a situation where people can, and the angle parking on that would be better and make the sidewalk a little bigger. There's design criteria that if you're doing it, I would like to have us see it to make sure that you're actually creating a better Dixie. Because it's not all about having just cars parked along Dixie. That doesn't create a good walking area. And I've lived right up there, and walked to downtown, and that's the worst stretch of it, kind of. How you landscape it and do things would make a difference. So those are kind of my issues, and that's what I was going to put in my motion, that it was withdrawn. So unless those types of things are in there, I won't be able to support the motion.
Well, right now, we do have a motion on the floor.
Right.
It's your motion. Could we substitute up to 800 feet so we can get some clarity for staff?
I'll be glad to include that in my motion.
And Nick, you don't have a problem with that?
I'm okay with that.
And now,
Hold on.
Go ahead.
I'd like to get, is staff okay with an 800-foot requirement? I think that's proposed by the
I'll take recommendation from the board on that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and now, your motion called for,
All of that,
Vertical
making 71
construction?
spaces. Well, vertical construction, which is staff recommendation.
Nick is saying before CO.
No, I'm saying that the parking lot needs to be constructed before the CO is issued. So,
Well, that would
Everything
be-
has to be built.
right, so staff is saying that before vertical construction takes place, they need to find this
They need to have the spaces.
But like, if they come to staff and say, hey, we've secured this site like they currently have across the street, it's under contract, and they make application, that needs to be built before they get issued a CO, and not the other, like, they don't have to build the parking lot before they start building their building.
Building, okay, and that is your understanding?
It is. Do I need to include anything else?
No, that's fine,
good.
and that's staff's understanding.
That's good, yeah.
Okay, so unless there's more discussion, I'd like to call the question.
Yeah.
Because
I
we have a motion
I
and a
have
second.
one comment on my motion before we go, right?
No, not anymore.
Okay. And that would be, in an ideal world, the water main would not have been a problem. This would have been a complete package. For us to, not to make a decision today on this because of the circumstances, they brought it to us without a complete package on the parking. And to blame the applicant for that and to postpone it, I think, is unfair. I think if staff wanted everything tied down to begin with, they should have held off on bringing it to us until it happened.
Well,
That's my thing on it.
I agree with Pete on that, and I'd like to just point out that this has to go to another city commission meeting, and then another city commission meeting.
Yes,
So to
that
hold
can mean more than
hold
that.
up the applicant and to hold up staff in this process at this point, after having already sent them back to the drawing board, I think is unfair. And, I mean, Mike, under no uncertain terms, am I not sitting up here saying, figure out the parking before the second reading? I'm not gonna make it a condition of it, but figure out the parking before the second reading.
And then my other comment basically goes to Frank with regard to the water main property, which I think is an ideal situation, frankly, for you. Even if you make it one lane and only get 20-some-odd spaces. When staff looks at the parking lot, if that is the solution, God knows what it is, where it is, if that turns out to be the solution, I would like to see that the landscaping enhances US 1, and if we need to participate in that, that staff take care of trees and everything else.
I think it comes, Kev?
I want to make something clear here. When staff received this application, it was not complete. It has been amended throughout the process. We have had late submittals on everything that we've received. So for staff to sit here and take the blame
I'm not
for how this
blaming.
has been put together by the applicant is ridiculous.
All right, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to get into
I am
this.
not blaming staff. I am saying that we wouldn't be looking at it if what the chairman wishes and what Mr. Frank wishes had been in place. We wouldn't have to be doing this.
What staff can do is hold this till everything is in place, as we're constantly criticised for doing, and then wait until it's everything in place and then take it to commission.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna,
Call
I
the
think this is a
question.
good discussion and we should have it, but I want to get this motion, either passed or failed so that we can move on. But I think that's a very good discussion because I agree with, I don't think things should come forward unless they're a complete package. And I don't blame staff, I just don't think, I don't care if it's 3 minutes before the meeting. But I want to take a vote. Before we take the vote, I just want to say that I don't think the attorney for the condo or the association came here, and she didn't represent at least the boards of the association. So I think you do represent your boards. You're not here so you can make, a couple $100 by giving a 3-minute speech. So I do think you do represent what you were told to say.
I am president of that board, master board.
So was there a vote by the
Well,
boards?
If you could come to the podium.
That's neither here nor there. I want to call the question, I want to take a vote.
Okay, I'm just going to repeat the motion really quickly because it's been a little back and forth. Approve with the following conditions: parking within 800 feet of the site, parking lot constructed prior to CO being issued, and staff come up with a term limit for parking lease to secure a permanent solution.
And 71 spaces.
71 spaces.
Is that your understanding of it? Okay. All right, please call the roll.
Board Member Makeumson.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeth.
Yes.
Board Member Waka.
No.
Board Member Walson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Campenny.
No.
You missed
You miss,
You missed somebody.
you miss someone.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Board Member Dooley.
No.
3-3.
It fails.
Fails.
Motion, it fails. May I suggest that it come back at our next meeting, that we table it to a date certain so he doesn't have to re-advertise, and that he comes back with a complete package.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Public comment? Call the roll, please.
Do we need to put the date into the motion?
Whatever our next CRB meeting
Yeah,
is.
next
Okay.
CRB meeting, yeah.
This is just for it to come back.
Will come back, and that way he doesn't have to re-advertise.
Okay.
Then that's the motion.
Okay, and that was the second. Please call the roll.
Board Member Dooley.
Yes.
Board Member Makeumson.
Yes.
Board Member Waka.
Yes.
Board Member Walson.
No.
Board Member Schroeth.
Yes.
Vice Chair Campenny.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Next one is Resolution 2469 of 2021, LDC Amendment to Sign Code.
Mr. Chairman, I'm doing on my iPad here. Can Pernell
Are we ready, guys?
tell me what page number I need to go to catch up with you guys?
97.
97? All right, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Panal Gandhi Savda, CRA Administrator for the record. This is a Land Development Code amendment. This is a citywide code that requires all pole signs to be removed by January 1st, 2022. This item was brought to the City Commission in July to get direction to staff, and the City Commission directed staff to remove the deadline for the removal of pole signs and provide regulations that will help expedite instead. This ordinance was adopted in 2007, and since we adopted that ordinance, we've had over 100 pole signs that have been removed, and we continue to decrease in pole signs throughout the city. So this amendment is just to help expedite that and not put pressure on everybody to remove the pole signs considering the economic condition. So the amendment includes that to have all abandoned or damaged non-conforming pole signs within the city should be removed in an expedited manner. So if there are any damaged non-conforming pole signs that require a permit, and that needs to be repaired, would have to be removed within 90 days of the notice from the city. Or any abandoned non-conforming signs pertaining to a business that has been closed for over 180 days would have to be removed after 90 days of notice from the city. So that's the staff recommendation for the proposed changes. And I'm asking to approve the ordinance number 2469-2021.
Does anyone
Move
have any
staff
questions?
recommendation.
Do I get a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any questions of staff? Seeing none, we can do it all in favor for this. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, now, do we have the Triangle District? Oh, she left.
I know, I don't know where she went.
Oh, her bag is still there. She may be
Yeah.
outside.
Probably in the restroom.
Can we do the burp guidelines then?
Do you want to check outside really
If she's
fast?
outside, let's take her so she can go home to her kids.
Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Okay, so this is just an update to some of the changes that were made to the master plan since it was brought to the CRB and CRA. This is a resolution to adopt the master plan and also the naming of the district to Triangle District. We will use this master plan as a guide for future planning. We're not required to do everything that's in the plan. That's clear in the resolution. So Jessica Seymour is here to kind of provide summary of a few revisions that we've made to the plan since it was last presented to you. And staff is requesting that the board approve resolution number 07-2021, adopting the master plan and the naming of the district.
Hi, good evening. Jessica Seymour, planner for Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council for the record. Again, thank you for having me here again. And we heard a lot of really good discussion about this the last time I was here, and I can echo the fact that staff has used that feedback to help shape what the next year will look like and the priorities in that master plan, especially. As far as specific changes in the master plan that from the last time you saw it, we incorporated some more specific language in the adoption about the tree infill programs, to create a tree infill program on, that's on page 48, if you want to pull that up, and 49. As well as adopting the plan, naming the district. Oops.
Was it 48?
No, it's okay. It just was 49 on the page numbers, I guess. There we go. So it's okay. We don't need to look at it. It's
Okay,
right.
sorry.
And then we also got some comments back from the CRA board, one of which was regarding creating an underpass under the proposed vision for the Fraser Creek Bridge whenever that is reconstructed. So we added neat details on that and some notes on that, as well as a note on light pollution and the specifications of new lighting and how it can address light pollution in the community while still lighting up the active streets and creating a safe, walkable community. So those were the big highlights of edits that we've made. And again, a lot of the discussion that we had on the board has gone into the priorities for the budget in the coming year, and you'll see those in the projects that staff is recommending. And I'll blame the fact that we are discussing those priorities and potential work in the next year as to why I was in the hall.
Does anyone have changes, questions of Jessica? Is this something we've seen now, I think, 3 times?
I'll move staff recommendation.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
I
All
think
in
you did a
favor?
great job, just
Absolutely.
for a
you.
comment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thanks for all your work, Jessica.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Jessica.
Okay, burp guidelines.
This is the fun one.
Did you say burp guidelines?
Business improvement.
I know.
So at the last CRB meeting, I received some feedback from the board as to the amendments that the board is looking for in the burp guidelines. And based on what I heard or understood, I proposed some amendments to the burp program to require the applicants to upgrade their landscaping in compliance with the code requirements. These upgrade would be to the perimeter of the parcel and to the interior parking lot. And this would be in addition to the request for other eligible improvements that the applicant is requesting. Although these improvements would substantially enhance the property, staff does have concern about the proposed amendment. Even though I'm making the amendments, I do have concerns because we get about 5 to 6 applications every fiscal year. And usually we have to do 2 grant cycles to get those applications, and there's a lot of promotion involved, and making sure that we get enough applications so we can allocate the funds and have it in good use. But staff is concerned that requiring this could increase the expense for the applicant. And, if they're already planning to make some improvements to their property and not to require additional improvements by requiring to do landscaping, it could have a negative impact on the success of the program. Again, that's just staff's opinion based on what I've seen in the last 2-3 years of implementation of the program. So the board could consider some other options that staff is presenting to incentivize the applicant to bring the landscaping on property in compliance. We could consider reducing the matching percentage to 25% of eligible costs for the landscaping improvements. We could increase the grant award up to $15,000 if landscaping is going to be required as a condition of approval, in addition to other eligible improvements. Or we could just create a separate landscaping improvement grant program with a 50% match, not to exceed $10,000. But this would require a budget amendment and new program guidelines. So today, staff is requesting for the board to consider the alternatives, which includes either to adopt resolution number 08-2021 with the proposed amendments to the burp program, adopt resolution number 08-2021 with any modifications recommended by the board, or deny the resolution and keep the program as it is with no changes, or the board could request staff to do something completely different.
Or you could jump on, sing and dance.
Right.
Any questions of staff?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does it I noticed in what was proposed that they would bring the property up to meet all the landscaping requirements. And the things that came before you all, I wasn't at the meeting, were plans that were dealing with just a sign, and there was an opportunity for landscaping to occur around it. So would it be an option to just have them not say that it's a requirement to bring the entire property up to code, but have it to where they have to provide a landscape plan just as part of what their presentation is, so that the board could use that as one of the things when they determine the ranking and how much funds and stuff should be going to them, rather than making them hit the entire property. That was my thoughts as I read through.
I mean, that
Through what
could
was
be
there.
discretionary, like, I could look at a plan and I could say, you know, maybe do a couple of plants here, but the board could see something different. I think it's,
Well, it would be up to the board that would.
Well,
we
no,
would
it
have
wouldn't be
to-
the board, because they have a ranking system now, right?
yeah, we do, right?
And so that would have to become part of the ranking system, which is fine. I think that's a good idea.
I talked to Pinal a little bit about this, like, between the last meeting and now, and like, you know, help with some of this language. And in my mind, the concept wasn't that, like, everybody that walks through the door is going to meet landscape code. It's probably not possible.
Right.
But that at least offers us a benchmark of this is what it's supposed to be. And when I say a landscape plan, I don't mean like go hire Lucido for $5,000
Right.
to draw up a landscape plan and now half your budget's gone. I mean, like, show us what the code, like, give us a list of the items that the code's requiring, give us a list of the items that they're providing. Then we have a benchmark of, okay, this is what's required, this is what they're doing, because this is what can be accommodated both in their budget and by practical application. But at least then we have like some sort of benchmark, some sort of guideline, and we know what is required and would be met under a redevelopment scenario and what is being provided, as opposed to just, you know, one day this came in on Friday, I was trying to get out of here, and, you know, it ended up looking like this versus the next one that comes
Right.
in, and, you know, at least the code's the only
Yeah.
real benchmark that we have.
Right.
So let's put a benchmark in there. I don't expect any of these to actually meet code. I
Right.
don't think someone's gonna come in and say,
Right.
here's my landscape plan, it meets code, you know, giving me my $8,000 so that I can paint my porch.
Right.
You know, I think it's just, you know, what's the code require? You know, I'm putting $500 into landscaping, and I'm, you know, checking these 2 boxes of the 15 that code requires. And now we as a board can look at something that says, okay, this is what the code requires, this is what they're doing. The deviation is either acceptable to us or it's not.
Right. And
I have a question. How does the landscape code read now? Does it talk about specific trees or brushes that they
it all
have to?
depends on the zoning. We would have to, I would have to see what zoning the parcel is in. I would look at the code landscape requirement for that specific area. And I could, I could use that as my benchmark when I'm making recommendation to the applicant. So I do need some sort of benchmark. I can't just make up something.
Right, and like in the neighborhood, the urban neighborhood district, you're required to have 2 shade trees. So, you know, if they came in and the site has 0 and they're proposing to put 1 in, then like at least we've gotten halfway there.
We've given them, and then Pinel can rank them a little higher because of that.
Yeah.
And-
Right.
And I think, Katie, you want to say something?
I like it separate. I like option 3 the best, because it kind of, if we go back to what we just approved for the sign, and we took away that date because people aren't wanting to spend money. This is forcing businesses to spend more money to get the other money. So I like the idea of you incentivize by matching 50% for the landscape grant. And you keep it, I like the landscaping, I'm agreeing with that, but I think the way to approach it is more of an incentive, not you're gonna be penalized with this grant money because you're not doing this part.
The
Well, I think
stick in
that's
my
what Nick
craw is
said.
giving people money to further violate code. You know what I mean? So like we're giving, like on that sign that we approved on US 1, you know, we flipped the bill for half of this sign and got 0 plants out of it.
Right. And that's why I think that it should be combined also.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's just mine.
doing the other thing, I would
But you're
agree with
usually
that
giving
also.
them money in the original grant program to come up to code for the sign.
So I mean, I'd be open to,
It's two code.
I'd be open to increasing the amount of the grant to where if you qualify under this, there's no longer a $10,000 cap, maybe it's say 15,000, which effectively means that we're incentivizing someone to spend an additional $5,000 on landscaping, and we're matching that.
I don't know if it'll come out that way, though, and I think we may stop.
I feel like we're contradicting
We'll have fewer people coming out, not coming out for the grant, but we'll just have fewer dollars in the program. So, I think you two guys hit it on the head, that we use it, if they come in and say, we're gonna put a tree there, well, then Pinell can say, well, that gives them another 10% in whether they should get all the money. And I think that's a good way to do it. That's incentivizing them without forcing them to do something. And I think that's an excellent way of doing it if we're gonna do it that way. And I agree with, I know what you're saying, Katie, but we'll never get anybody to do anything that way. And so, if we think it's a good thing to have landscaping, we're incentivizing them because we're giving them.
We're already incentivizing them, because quite frankly, like, we're giving them
The money to do it.
So, like,
Can we not create a program, and this would have to analyze the budget, but Mr. Wilson always picks trees and benches. Is there not like a separate program that, even if we gave like 75%, so we're encouraging the landscaping, we're ultimately wanting this landscaping code, and it's separate? It might be more money. but
Well, if it's
that's
if
what
we're
we
going
want.
to a separate fund, as Pinell said, then we're talking about funding issues and budgetary issues.
Yeah, I mean, like, to stay out of the weeds of
I just don't think
further bureaucracy, it's probably easier to roll it into this, but I mean,
And we could try it this way, and then I'm gonna count on Katie to remind us come January or February, if it isn't working out with our first applicants, and then we could sort of plan to do something else before the new budget comes in. They just had the first reading last night. So, I mean, I'd hate to have to upset that now, and because then this has to go to the commission to vote on. So, I mean, we're gonna hold it up anyways.
and Pinell, as the BURP program's currently written, would landscape improvements qualify for improvements, or like, do landscape improvements not fit underneath the BURP guidelines currently?
Currently, I think it's secondary. I would have to look at the guidelines.
So I mean, maybe the solution here is that, expand the, what qualifies as a BURP program. You know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
don't have to, like, somebody could come in with just a landscape plan under the BURP program, to your point, and get dollars from the BURP program.
Yes, yeah, I like that. I just don't want to force someone who needs to fix a sign.
You need to talk in your mic, Katie.
Yeah,
I think
so
we've
we
given
have,
money to people we've
Did you
given
say you
money
couldn't
for
hear me?
trees.
Sorry, there's a lot of glass between us. I just don't want to discourage a business owner for coming in and improving something because they don't follow.
Kev, did you have an answer?
so currently it says landscaping a maximum of 1,500 or 15% of the total project, whichever is less, and no irrigation. That's the current requirement for landscaping, but I
seems
think
counter
we
to
can
the
just remove
conversation.
that.
So they have to have 15% at least?
No,
Maximum of
maximum. It
1,500.
puts a
that's-
cap on it.
Puts a cap
Oh,
on
I
it.
don't think
Yeah,
about that.
so we could
No,
probably
I
remove
think-
that.
I mean,
Strike the cap.
I think strike the
I
cap
like
and
that.
strike the
Good
whole,
way.
I mean, landscaping, in my mind, I mean, our landscape bill for Avonlea is like $350,000. So, there's as much money there's 3 times as much money in landscaping out there as there is in like making, sewage go downhill. So, it's important, and I think there shouldn't be a cap on it, and it probably, in my opinion, should stand on its own as an actual, BURP qualifying thing. If somebody were to come in here and say, hey, I'm gonna do $20,000 worth of landscaping to this property, I'd like the city to match it, or the CRA to match it, that, I think that
I'll stand
should
behind
get,
Yeah.
included.
Okay,
I'll modify my motion to include those changes.
I think I need a
Frank
little.
needs to modify his motion to eliminate the cap and make landscaping projects qualify for BURP funds.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
That was
Does that sound good, city attorney?
That's okay. I mean, I understand. I guess I've gotten a little confused here. What are we voting on? And what is Nick's solution for this? Personally, I think that we should not have a cap on it. I think if they want to come in and do $10,000 worth of landscape renovation, and we're going to foot half of it, I think it's the most attractive thing we can do for US 1 and for a business, to be honest with you.
That's what the motion is.
That was the
Yeah.
motion.
Yes.
Is that the motion?
So the motion is to adopt the changes that staff is recommending or has proposed. So it would be item 1 here with further changes to the BERT program that eliminate the cap on reimbursements for landscaping and make landscaping a standalone BERT qualifying project.
Well, and also.
That's the motion?
It makes it to where it takes out the
Great.
part about having to meet the code on every project. They get points for it.
No, no.
No.
We
Is it
changed
points
that
or
now.
required?
Well, it's required, a landscape plan, but
But-
that's a point thing.
The way their language reads, and I
The
mean,
current
Pinal,
or
can
the
you
proposed?
maybe put up that red line on the screen so we can see it?
Yeah, I mean. What's it saying?
Okay, so this says that all eligible applicants are required to upgrade landscaping in accordance with the City of Stewart Landscape Code for the perimeter of commercial property that abuts a public right-of-way and those portions of the code related to interior parking lot landscaping. It may include but not limited to asphalt removal, plant materials, xeriscaping, native plants, shade trees, and irrigation systems. Where the landscape code cannot reasonably be met, the applicant shall provide justification statement for the code not being met. The board will make the final recommendation to approve the grant with the variance to the code. Replacement of existing landscaping material are not eligible under the grant program. If nonconformities exist due to site limitations, the goal shall be to bring the property as much into compliance as possible. The new landscaping under the grant will be maintained in accordance with the City of Stewart Landscaping Code and will not be removed or negatively altered as determined by the CRA for 5 years after installation.
And perhaps that's a little strongly
That's
worded.
harsh.
But the concept.
I
and
think that's
maybe
harsh. I agree.
The concept is that the code would remain the benchmark for what's supposed to be there. And the board would approve what comes before us as a variance to that code, recognizing that these are the reasons why the code can't be met.
Do you understand what we're getting at?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Mr.
like
Chairman?
hitting the code on every project is going to do exactly what you said.
I mean,
People won't do it because landscaping, bringing it up to code is going to take more money than what
Yeah.
they even could do.
Right, and I think that's more for staff to use that as a benchmark.
Right.
So I just probably need to change the wording a little bit to kind of encourage them to bring it as much into
Chairman
compliance
advice.
as possible.
Strongly suggest
Yes.
instead of required.
But sometimes,
I like that.
honestly, when I'm talking to the applicant and if it's not required, they don't want to do it.
well, and I think providing them with the shortcomings of code,
Yeah, that
like
it could-
gives them at least, and granted, we don't have a city tree, but if it says, code requires 2 shade trees, then they at least know, like, okay, well, if I find 1 shade tree, then I'm halfway there. If you tell them you don't meet landscape code, it becomes a where's Waldo question where you don't really
Yeah.
know how you don't meet code, you don't know how you might be able to meet code, and, now you're just out there looking for, some sort of answer in the dark.
Yeah, it's
So
going
is
to
your-
need some language tweaking.
Is your
Yes.
motion gonna change the word required?
My motion would change that paragraph entirely
Okay.
to read more along the lines that staff will use
Okay.
code as a benchmark
That's
and show to the board when applications come forward where code is not being met and provide that obviously to the applicant as well. And, for each application, we'll be able to know, okay, this is code, this is what's being provided. Do we feel like that's,
I like
Is
that.
it an upgrade? That's the
And
key.
you're also removing that 25%.
yeah, the 25% cap and the $1,500 cap gets removed.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did hear that, and I agree with the concepts. I would like to keep it as simple as possible. This red phrasing is a little bit tough, harsh. I like the harsh, I really do. I'd like to keep it simple, stupid, a little kiss thing on this thing. So if you could bring it back probably with Nick's and Katie's ideas and Frank's, keeping it as simple as possible to encourage people to improve their landscaping. And that will foot the bill, because I have no problem footing the bill. If we're going to foot the bill for signs, I don't see why the heck we can't foot it for landscaping. And if I remember correctly, when we were talking about the funeral parlor on US 1, the old building that was going to be rehabbed, they never picked us up on that business thing, remember, Pernell? ACOC, the old building
Right,
that didn't fall down but should have.
yeah.
I think it did.
That landscaping was part of that grant we were looking at to talk them into doing something about
Right,
it.
and
So
we did
just,
have
let's
for-
keep it simple and encourage people to upgrade their landscaping. And make points for it or whatever it takes. You just go ahead and propose what you think needs to be done to make that, to encourage them to take advantage of city
move
money
on.
to make US 1 more beautiful,
Or whatever.
Everywhere, yeah.
or wherever.
Wherever we're putting dollars
I will
in
mention-
the CRB, landscaping should come
Okay.
with
I will mention two things that I brought up. One, long time ago to Purnell, Purnell knows. Orlando has a city tree ordinance where they actually will give you a tree if you maintain it. We have never done anything on that order in all the years I brought it, which is probably 10 years ago. They give trees and you, on your property, and you agree to maintain it, and it provides sidewalk shade, and it does all that kind of thing. The other thing I think that we lose track of is that people walk the city, and that we don't have enough benches. That is also an amenity that is part of improving, I think, a business or what's in front of it. And all those things probably could be asked or requested or helped or encouraged by putting money into it. And I like the idea that you guys have gotten onto it, and I'm going to let you take care of it.
So do you have enough guidance?
I do. Do I need to bring this back? Because I was planning
Yes.
to take this to the CRA and then start the cycle October 1st.
I'm fine with it going to the CRA with these comments incorporated.
And I will make
Oh, yeah.
it, and I will make it
Okay.
not as harsh.
Yeah, if she can just
very
write it up
simple.
for them.
So moved,
So moved.
seconded,
Is that all we need?
thirded, fourth.
Okay.
I'm not
We
in
have a
this, but I
second.
vote yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Go. Before I adjourn, I just would like to have a discussion item at our next meeting about what should come to this board and in what position it should come, so that we don't continuously have incomplete packages unless the board decides this is what they want.
And I just want to clarify that, and I think it jumps on, something that got a little tense between us and staff. Like, when we say staff, Kevin, we're not pointing to the three people from staff that are in this meeting. Like, staff as a whole includes Public Works, it includes everybody, and it's getting that information that comes in when, the applicant gets it in to those different departments so that issues can get flushed out in a timely manner, so.
Yeah, I want to clarify, I was not getting to the board with that comment. I was getting to the applicant, who knows very well what was submitted, when it was submitted, when they were advised to contact Public Works, when they were advised to look at the right-of-way. It's not a week ago. When did staff receive comments from or responses from the applicant was not expressed in a way that was correct tonight?
Staff may have even told them to have the parking worked out.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I remember Terry, and not to compare you to past legacies, but I mean, Terry O'Neill wouldn't have let that, come here, and I, your point's well taken, that, you deny somebody to come here, and all of a sudden, you're getting phone calls from upstairs and such, I can appreciate that, but, I have struggled in the past with getting responses out of, departments that are across the parking lot, and sometimes,
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a comment
that's
too. I do not make
staff.
it personal, Kevin. It wasn't,
No, don't
it
take
wasn't
that way.
staff. I know that I was called 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago on, hey, can we put this meeting off and have it on X date, okay? And to me, that means that something wasn't quite ready and that, okay, well, they're going to postpone it and we're going to hear it on such and such a date. And I guess I expected that it would be complete.
So
Now,
did we.
let me put it this way. I have no problem voting, obviously, the way I did tonight, on voting on that being an incomplete thing if it was something that was not within the applicant's purview or fault, the water main, for example. So I'm very happy to approve it, giving you the discretion to tell him, okay? I don't really think I should have had a press, to be honest with you, for the 71. That staff should have come up with a recommendation
I'd
of
imagine
some
there's
kind.
probably a timing issue there
The
as well.
staff did make a recommendation in the board item of 50 on-site and 40 off-site. That was the staff recommendation. And the board requested that,
So instead of
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about what we
yes.
already did,
right,
let's bring back a discussion item, we'll think about it, and then we could instruct staff what we would like to see as a board. Otherwise, don't bring it to us.
Well, the other thing is, you could actually pass a resolution that says staff can't bring it to you, that
No.
staff can then hand to them and say, without this, I can't let it go on the agenda.
Well, that's what I was getting at. But again, I think he needs to think about it, work on it, see the way it should be, and that's why I'm saying we bring it back.
Okay, I'll tell you, I have a real problem with telling staff they can and cannot do something. I think they're intelligent enough to make
I mean,
decisions.
I think this is a slippery slope that we've run down.
Not gonna
so
order
I
them.
make a
You let
motion
one
that
guy
we
come in
adjourn.
and, you know,
Not
he's
to bring
missing,
something.
he's missing a tree somewhere in the parking lot, and we tell him, hey, you gotta go find it. But, you know, now all of a sudden, you know, we've got a deal where, you know, I have this under contract. I thought I was gonna build a parking lot over there. Now I'm not, but I don't know. Maybe I still am, like.
But it didn't happen, I don't want to get into that, but it just didn't happen today or yesterday. So, I mean, regardless of what we were told.
Yeah,
Mike, do you want to say something, and then I
Nope.
want to go home?
I'm just
I make a motion, we adjourn.
So, it's an item for you to bring back next time.
Who's opposed?